Elias Vance paid $1 silver for the silence he craved. The coin, heavy and cool in his palm, was the price for Bitter Creek Ranch, a sprawling tract of dust and promise auctioned on the courthouse steps. He was a man running from the echoes of gunfire and the weight of a tin star he had long since discarded. He wanted nothing more than the quiet toil of the land, a place where the only conflicts were against drought and season. The auction itself had been a strange, hollow affair. The auctioneer's voice trembled, his eyes darting towards the back of the sparse crowd where a man with a polished suit and a cold smile watched everything. No one else bid. When the gavel fell on Elias's single dollar, a collective, relieved sigh seemed to pass through the townspeople. They knew something he didn't. He pocketed the deed, a crisp, official-looking document, and rode west, away from the prying eyes of the town and towards the jagged hills that cradled his new life. The sun was a hammer against the anvil of the sky, and the land was parched. But as he crested the final rise, he saw it, a small, sturdy ranch house, a weathered barn, and, most importantly, the dark, damp earth around a stone-lined well. It was an oasis in a world of brown. Then he saw the smoke, a thin, grey tendril curling from the chimney into the clean blue air. Someone was already there. He dismounted slowly, his hand resting near the worn leather of his holster, a reflex he had tried to forget. The front door of the ranch house creaked open and a woman emerged. She was not what he expected. Her face was etched with hardship, but her eyes burned with a defiant fire. In her hands, she held an old but well-kept Winchester rifle, and she held it with an unnerving familiarity. "That's far enough," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor of fear and anger running through it. Elias raised his hands slowly, showing they were empty. My name is Elias Vance. I believe this is my property now." He reached into his coat and produced the deed, holding it out for her to see. She didn't move closer. "That paper is a lie, bought and paid for with dirty money," she stated, her knuckles white on the rifle stock. "My name is Sarah Miller. This was my husband's land. It is my land now. And I'm not leaving." Elias looked from the fraudulent deed in his hand to the desperate, resilient woman before him. He saw not a squatter but a survivor guarding the last remnant of her world. The silence he had paid $1 for was already broken, replaced by the ringing of injustice. The old part of him, the part that stood for others, began to stir. He lowered his hand. "I'm not here to throw you out, Mrs. Miller. I'm here to understand why someone would sell a place like this for $1. He made his camp in the lee of the barn, a silent agreement passing between them. He would not enter her house, she would not shoot him while he slept. For 2 days, Elias worked, repairing a broken corral fence and clearing stones from a small irrigation ditch that ran from the well. He watched her from a distance, a solitary figure tending to a small, walled garden with a fierce determination that seemed to hold the entire ranch together. She was growing food, surviving against the odds, a testament to a spirit as unyielding as the land itself. On the evening of the second day, 2 riders approached. They were not neighbors. They moved with a lazy arrogance, their eyes sweeping over the property as if they were measuring it for a coffin. They reined in their horses a few yards from where Elias was working. "You must be the fool who paid $1 for this dust bowl," the bigger one sneered, showing a line of stained teeth. "Mr. Thorne sent us a message of goodwill. He wants you to know that you've bought yourself a hornet's nest. Best thing for you to do is tear up the deed and ride on before you get stung." The other man just watched, his hand resting on the butt of his pistol. Elias didn't move, his posture deceptively calm. "I'll think on it," he said, his voice quiet. The henchman chuckled. "Don't think too long. It ain't the land our boss wants. It's the water. And he always gets what he wants." They turned and galloped away, leaving a cloud of dust and a thick, choking sense of dread. The first warning had been delivered. The visit from Thorne's men shattered the fragile truce. That night, Sarah approached Elias's campfire, the Winchester held loosely at her side. She looked at the flames, her face a mask of grief and fury. "You need to know what you've ridden into," she said, finally meeting his gaze. She told him about her husband, Daniel, a good man who understood the land better than anyone. He had discovered their well was more than just a well, it tapped into a vast, deep aquifer, a hidden river flowing beneath the parched earth. It was enough water to turn the entire valley green. A powerful cattle baron named Blackwood, a man who owned politicians and sheriffs, had found out. He wanted that water for his immense herds. Daniel wouldn't sell. Sarah's voice cracked. He loved this place. A month later, he was dead. They called it a riding accident. She was certain he'd been murdered. Soon after, the county clerk, a man deep in Blackwood's pocket, manufactured a delinquent tax claim and declared the property forfeit. The auction was a sham, designed to launder the theft through a legal process. No local would dare bid against Blackwood. The real deed, she whispered, the one signed by my father-in-law and passed to Daniel, is safe. It's the only proof I have that this is all a lie. She trusted no one, and now a stranger held the false key to her home. The next afternoon, a buggy rolled up the track, pulled by a fine black horse. The man holding the reins was Jedediah Thorne. He was impeccably dressed in a dark suit, his face clean-shaven, his smile practiced and pleasant. He was far more menacing than his hired thugs. He stepped down, dusting off his coat, and approached Elias as if they were business partners meeting in a city office. "Mr. Vance," he began, his voice smooth as polished river stone. "A pleasure to meet you in person. I represent certain interests who have a long-term vision for this valley." He gestured vaguely at the arid landscape. "You've stumbled into a complex local matter. To smooth things over, I am authorized to offer you $100 silver for your deed. A handsome profit on your initial investment, I think you'll agree." Elias felt a cold knot in his stomach. $100. It was enough to buy a real piece of land, far away from this trouble. It was the easy way out, the quiet life he had sought. He could take the money and be gone by sunrise. He could forget the woman in the house and the haunted look in her eyes. But as he looked past Thorne, at the simple, defiant homestead, he knew he couldn't. "The ranch isn't for sale," Elias said flatly. Thorne's smile didn't falter, but the light in his eyes died. "Every man has a price, Mr. Vance. You've just chosen to pay a much higher one." He turned, climbed back into his buggy, and rode away, leaving behind a silence more threatening than any shout. The politeness was over. The next morning, the siege began. Thorne's men returned, not to talk, but to break them. They positioned themselves on the ridge overlooking the ranch, effectively cutting off the road to town. A rifle shot cracked the morning air, kicking up dust a few feet from the front porch. It wasn't a killing shot, it was a message. They were prisoners. Throughout the day, sporadic shots peppered the walls of the house and the barn, a constant, nerve-shredding reminder of their isolation. Sarah and Elias took cover, their world shrinking to the confines of the bullet-scarred buildings. In the late afternoon, two of the henchmen made a dash for the well, carrying sacks of what looked like quicklime. Their intent was clear: if they couldn't have the water, they would poison it. Elias reacted instantly. Using the cover of the barn, he moved to a new position, his old instincts taking over. He wasn't a lawman anymore, but he remembered how to fight. He fired two carefully aimed shots, not at the men, but at the ground just in front of them. The bullets whined off the rocks, sending chips of granite flying. The henchmen scrambled back to the ridge, leaving the sacks behind. They had saved the well, but the victory was temporary. As the sun began to set, casting long, ominous shadows across the yard, the ranch felt less like a home and more like a tomb. As darkness fell, the weight of their predicament settled upon Elias. He had made a choice, and that choice had cornered them. He found Sarah in the dim light of the kitchen, cleaning the old Winchester. "This is my fault," he said, his voice rough with guilt. "I should have taken the money. I could have walked away. Instead, I brought Thorne's full wrath down on you." Sarah stopped her work and looked at him, her expression unreadable in the gloom. "Since Daniel died," she said slowly, "every person I've turned to has either been scared of Blackwood or on his payroll. I've been alone. You're the first person who didn't run. You stayed." In that moment of shared desperation, a true alliance was forged. Her resolve strengthened his. She crossed the room to a heavy, leather-bound family Bible on the mantelpiece. She opened the back cover, revealing a hidden compartment carved into the thick board. Inside lay a folded, yellow document. "This is it," she whispered, handing him the original deed to Bitter Creek Ranch. Signed and sealed by the territorial governor, they knew they couldn't hold out forever. They needed help. Looking at the precious document in his hand, a desperate plan began to form in Elias's mind. He had to get that deed, and Sarah, to safety. He had to reach an authority that Blackwood couldn't buy. Dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. Jedediah Thorne had lost his patience. He arrived with his full contingent of men, 6 of them, their faces grim. They carried rifles and torches. He strode into the yard, stopping a safe distance from the house. "Sarah!" "Vance," he boomed, his voice echoing in the morning stillness. "This is your final offer. Come out, sign the deed, and you will be allowed to leave with your lives. Refuse, and we will burn this ranch to the ground with you in it." Elias stepped out onto the porch alone. He held up the fraudulent deed, the one he'd bought for $1, hoping Thorne would assume it was the only one that mattered. "There's no need for that, Thorne," Elias called out, playing for time. He needed a diversion, a few crucial minutes. "Let's be reasonable," Thorne laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Reason left when you refused my money. Mr. Blackwood is a man of vision, not patience. He sees this valley irrigated, his cattle fat. He sees profit. You and that woman see a pile of wood and sentiment. The future is coming, Vance. You are simply in the way." He gave a sharp nod to his men. "Burn it." The men raised their torches and started to advance, their shadows stretching long and monstrous in the early light. The final confrontation had begun. Just as the first torch was about to be thrown, a single, powerful gunshot split the air. It wasn't from Elias's pistol or the henchman's rifles. It came from the road. All heads snapped towards the sound. A lone rider sat on a powerful horse, a smoking Colt in his hand. He wore the duster of a long-distance traveler, and pinned to his vest was the unmistakable, sun-glinting star of a U.S. Marshal. Behind him, a posse of 6 deputized men crested the hill, their rifles at the ready. Thorne froze, his face a picture of disbelief turning to raw panic. "Marshal Reed," he stammered, his composure finally shattering. The marshal, a man with eyes that missed nothing, dismounted. "Jedediah Thorne. I have a federal warrant for your arrest. And for your employer, Marcus Blackwood. Conspiracy to defraud, intimidation of federal officers, and suspicion of murder." As if on cue, Sarah Miller walked out of the house, holding her family Bible. She opened it and presented the true, original deed to the marshal. "And here is the proof of their fraud, Marshal," she said, her voice clear and strong. She also handed him a letter, written by Daniel in the week before he died, detailing Blackwood's threats. Marshal Reed took the documents. "I've been investigating Blackwood for months," he said, his voice carrying across the yard. "Your stand here, Mr. Vance, was the final piece of the puzzle. It's over." Thorne and his stunned men were swiftly disarmed and taken into custody. Their reign of terror ended as quickly as it began. Weeks later, a profound quiet had reclaimed Bitter Creek Ranch. It was no longer the silence of fear or isolation, but of peace. Marshal Reed had been true to his word. Marcus Blackwood's empire was being dismantled by federal agents, and Sarah Miller's title to her land was declared ironclad and inviolable. Elias had spent the time repairing the bullet holes in the barn and strengthening the corral. The work was honest, and with each swing of the hammer, he felt the ghosts of his past fade a little further. Now, his horse was packed. His job was done. Justice had been served. He had found the trouble he never wanted and was ready to search for his peace once more. Sarah met him by the gate, her hands dusty from the garden. "You're leaving," she said. It wasn't a question. "I am," Elias confirmed, avoiding her gaze. "My work here is done." Sarah looked out over the valley, vibrant even under the midday sun. "This land has enough water to support more than one family," she said softly. "It has more than enough work, too. I'm not offering you a job, Elias. I'm offering you a partnership. A home. If you still want 1 inch, Elias looked from the endless, lonely horizon back to the small, resilient ranch. He looked at Sarah, whose strength had matched his own, and at his own hands, calloused by building instead of fighting. For the first time in a decade, he felt he was exactly where he was supposed to be. A slow smile touched his lips. I think I would like that, he said. And together, they turned to look at their future. If you were inspired by this story of courage and justice, show your support by hitting that like button. These tales remind us that even in the face of overwhelming odds, one person's decision to stand for what is right can change everything. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you never miss a new story of hope and resilience. Click the video on your screen right now for another incredible tale you won't want to miss.